Hey everyone, welcome to Immigration 301 Office Hours with Jeff and Danielle, your advanced level guide to navigating the world of immigration. I'm Danielle Goldman, entrepreneur, immigration advocate, and guide for innovative work visa solutions.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeff Goldman, immigration lawyer with over 30 years of experience advocating for foreign nationals seeking legal status in the U.S.
And together we're going to be taking your questions, tackling challenges, and delivering insights you need to move forward with confidence on your path. So let's dive in, Jeff. We had to jump on a call immediately today because this is pretty crazy what's happening between Harvard and the US government right now. It's all over the news that yesterday the US Department of Homeland Security revoked Harvard's certification under the Student and Exchange Visitor Program. And this obviously means and prohibits Harvard from enrolling new international students, and also requires current international students to transfer to other institutions or risk losing their legal status. And this includes folks who are graduated and in OPT. So via text, you and I chatted briefly. I know that you've had calls from a lot of folks in academia and government in Boston, and you've been having a lot of conversations with concerned individuals. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of those reactions have been and how you're responding and what's going on right now?
Sure. Well, Danielle, this is huge. Panic is setting in not just on the Harvard campus, but in higher ed circles everywhere across the United States. Because what happens at Harvard is going to affect other universities and foreign students all over the country. I really think this is like a game of chess that's going on. It's Harvard versus Trump. The stakes are high, and both sides are looking to see who's going to retreat first and to move backward to a safe position. I'm betting on Harvard here. They're doing the right thing. They are not going to step back and tell the Trump administration, sure, you tell us what policies we should have regarding our students. You tell us what curriculum you want, and we'll go ahead and follow your demands. I think Harvard is going to win round one of the battle. This morning, Harvard filed a lawsuit in federal court claiming the Trump administration is violating the Constitution. Good for them. I'm glad they filed it quickly. I'm glad that they've let the nation and the world know the Trump administration is going way too far. Total violation of First Amendment rights, both of students and of universities, to speak and think the way they want to. So I think Harvard will probably win round one, but I do think this is just the first part of a really much larger conversation that will concern all universities across the United States.
Yeah, I want to dig in a minute to why Harvard is being targeted right now, but can you start by, you said Harvard filed lawsuit. That's really interesting. Does that put everything on pause? What is the immediate ramification for students and folks in OPT right now?
Nothing is on pause yet. Harvard filed the lawsuit and announced its intention to quickly file a motion for a temporary restraining order to prevent the federal government from terminating Harvard's contract with the SEVP program. If a judge agrees and issues a temporary restraining order, then students can let out a sigh of relief, because then their SEVIS status will not be terminated. They can continue studying, they can continue graduating, and they can continue working on their legal optional practical training, which I want to talk about more in depth, because that's, to me, among the most important parts of this conversation.
So today, the lawsuit's been filed, but before a TRO or temporary relief is granted, a temporary restraining order is granted, what does it mean today for students and what international students, and what does it mean today for for folks in OPT. I mean, we have plenty of companies in our Build Fellowship network that have Harvard graduates on OPT today, and we're about to file a cap-exempt H-1B for them, but they're not yet in cap-exempt H-1B status. So what is their status today?
Today, they are in valid F1 status because the U.S. Department of Homeland Security gave Harvard 72 hours to respond, like a 72-hour warning before they revoke the contract between Harvard and SEVP, and before they revoke the valid F1 status of all of the Harvard's foreign students. So for the moment, status quo.
Interesting. And, they're saying that Harvard didn't abide by asks from the administration, which was to turn over student data on those who had participated in protests. They're saying that Harvard took foreign funding and didn't hand over that data on how much foreign funding, or didn't commit to stopping that foreign funding. And additionally, the DEI practices aren't in line with the administration's practices. Is that the expectation, that they're going to just reverse course on all of these in 72 hours, or else they're going to continue on with suspending SEVP? Is that even realistic?
It's not realistic, and Harvard's not going to capitulate within 72 hours and give the Trump administration what they want.
Yeah.
I do think within 72 hours, which started yesterday, I do think a federal judge will issue a temporary restraining order just to turn down the temperature and to give cooler minds a chance to talk and to, if not figure it out, at least to give cooler minds a chance to present their arguments to a federal court.
Right.
And so that's an appropriate use of a temporary restraining order, and I think that's what will happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so wild. Obviously, things will be paused, but this is an action that's so unprecedented from government. And it's fascinating that the US government would position itself against a top university in this country. I mean, we talk about talent pools in America and the strength of American competitiveness in the future. And this is just seems to be working against, I mean, this is your opinion, and I'm sure, not everyone's opinion across this country, but it just seems to be so clear that this works against having top talent continue to thrive. And frankly, one of the biggest drivers of our economic driver of our education system is the massive amount of international student funding that goes into by paying full tuition at these universities. More than 25% of Harvard's student base is foreign. That has to be a huge chunk of their tuition money.
You think? You're right, Danielle. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. This is not going to sit well with universities across the United States. It's not going to sit well with Republicans across the United States, because this is not what Trump promised. This is not the results that America needs. I do want to comment, though, this is not by chance that this is happening to Harvard. First of all, Trump's MAGA supporters have been screaming about wanting Trump to do something about sanctuary cities. And Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts have policies in place where they will not cooperate with the federal government in certain situations where they are not legally required to. So whether you like a sanctuary city or not, this is one of the main reasons why Trump is salivating at the idea that he's starting this campaign with Harvard.
Should other universities be concerned?
Yes. I think there's a lot at stake here, and they should be concerned on how this plays out, which is why I think one of my solutions to how this is played out is that all universities come together to, let's call a truce. Let's give Harvard the funding that Congress gave to Harvard. Let Harvard keep enrolling international students and let the current international students move on with their education and their work authorization under the current law. And let's have a truce and let's call for a real dialogue between universities, all universities, and the federal government and the state government. And let's really hash out what's best for America here. Regarding funding from federal and state governments, regarding free speech on campus, regarding whether or not you like diversity, equity, and inclusion, what should a college campus be doing to help students engage in thoughtful conversation and thoughtful ideas? All universities want that. And so I think this is an opportunity to come together. I'm hopeful that's where this is heading.
Have you ever thought about running for office? That was that was quite. I like it. It's obviously an idealistic way of moving forward and one that makes sense, but we don't live in a world where politics makes sense, right? It doesn't make sense that our universities just are. How do we cool down the temperature? I mean, I would love and hope that in the future these universities come together with the Republican Party, really is what we're talking about, and have a dialogue about what makes sense moving forward. I have to dive into this topic a little bit. It's going to digress a tiny bit here on the immigration lens, but you and I are two Jewish Americans, and we have a narrative that you actually just, I have to say it because you just alluded to talking about free speech on campus, right? And one of the reasons that the universities and Harvard is being targeted is because of Trump claims the anti-Semitism on campus is extreme. And what's really challenging for me personally today, as I read this memo from the government, is just this conflation, and they're using propaganda almost to really combine anti-Semitism with and have it be part of the rationale as to why these immigration policies have to change and why this is being revoked. This international student policy is being revoked from Harvard, and so it is really just a negative light on and making the enemy of Jews in America in a way by having this be one of these reasons why Harvard is not compliant with the federal government's policy. I think it's also worth saying that there is a limit to free speech in this country, and there is a reality where there have been, and many people who listen to this podcast won't know that there was a shooting in DC of a Jewish couple yesterday because of this call for intifada and this call for free Palestine. And there is a world in which protests can go too far and lead to violence. And I hope that there can be a dialogue in this country of where that line is drawn on campuses. But by really making anti-Semitism part of the rationale as to why students lose their international students lose status in the US is a very tough pill for me to personally swallow. I don't know if you have a similar reaction.
I completely agree. It's as you and I know, Danielle, it's been 5,000 years since Judaism first started that Jews have been scapegoated for so many different reasons. And this is, in my opinion, President Trump putting Jews in the firing line by claiming it's anti-Semitism that's leading to Harvard losing its funding.
Yeah.
It's outrageous, and it's just not helpful to the conversation. Anti-Semitism does exist on Harvard's campus and every other campus. So does Islamophobia. So the answer isn't to throw anti-Semitism into the spotlight as a reason to ruin people's lives who are about to lose their status, and to, to reduce cancer research funding on Harvard's campus, the better solution is to create dialogue, really constructive dialogue with all parties at the table. I think most people protesting against the war in Gaza are not looking to create violence, they're looking to be heard. They should be heard. So should the Jews on campus. So let's talk. Let's sit down and create a dialogue.
Yeah, I hope it's possible. I do. I think that it's terrifying to see violence escalate. It's terrifying to see, you know, the Jewish community feel threatened right now. It's also horrible to see war, and it's there. People are very. My opinion is people are very scared to use the word "and" these days. It's a lot of this or that, and we live in a world full of ands, right? Both things are true. Both things are a reality of what's going on for Israel, the Jewish community, Palestine, and the Palestinian community. And it's a very divided world that we find ourselves in. I just hope that we continue to find nuance in the conversation and have open dialogue, as you're saying. It feels so unrealistic in some of these settings, given the way the administration works. But you and I are very optimistic humans. That's why we started the Build Fellowship and Open Avenues Foundation in the first place, because we're solutions driven. So we'll shift to a more optimistic light, I promise, as we go through some of the conversation. But I want to turn to the impact on OPT right now. We've actually heard from the nominee for USCIS director that, if confirmed, he's going to work to end OPT for international students. I have such a hard time digesting this. I think it's wild that this is even a possibility. Do you think this could happen this year? Do you think that if it happens fast? Should we be preparing for the elimination of OPT?
I don't think OPT will be eliminated. I'm a little concerned about STEM OPT. OPT is the right for a foreign national student to work for 1 full year after graduation to obtain some kind of practical training inside the United States. That is written into the regulations. Congress passed it. It's law, and that cannot be taken away unless Congress agrees to take it away. STEM OPT, on the other hand, was really a creation of different administrations who were frustrated with the lack of H-1B visas and wanted to do something to help these talented foreign students get a couple of extra years of training and a couple of extra years to try to win the H-1B lottery. And that's how STEM OPT came about. I do think there are some arguments of that it might have been unlawful, the way STEM OPT was created. So I am a little bit concerned about that. But I don't think anything will happen quickly. And if the current administration tries to take away STEM OPT without congressional action, there will be lawsuits. I do think there'll be a temporary restraining order stopping it. And I also don't think that they will take it away for those currently on STEM OPT.
Interesting.
I do think it's a possibility that moving ahead, that could be taken away. It really would be bad for the American economy for all the reasons we know. These foreign national students who have degrees in the STEM fields are essential in pushing ahead the American economy.
Right.
And any reputable organization who's studied this and done real in-depth research about this agree that these talented foreign nationals add far more to the fabric of the U.S. economy and social systems than they take away. So I hope calmer minds will prevail, and we won't see STEM OPT taken away.
Right. There are hundreds of thousands of students every year in OPT, and that is a massive talent pool. We're seeing more than 40% of software developers, for instance, are international, right? the future of AI, the future of these industries that rely right now on some of these international students, to extract that so quickly without extract that talent pool from our country so quickly without any sort of training program in place would be devastating.
It's just handing a ticket, Danielle, handing a ticket to foreign
Right.
countries and foreign universities
Totally.
to jump ahead of us.
Right. China's
And
applauding. Like these countries
absolutely.
are cheering for the country to actually eliminate the ability for this top talent to come to the US. It would be so devastating for US competitiveness.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
And
no
this is
doubt.
happening quickly. I understand that universities in France, Singapore, China, they already, within days, have opened up their policies
Yeah.
to encourage the best and the brightest to come to their countries
Oh, I
to
bet.
study higher education.
Can you
Why
imagine?
would,
The easiest marketing that ever existed is the US government right now saying that we're not letting people into this country. I mean, if I were running a university anywhere else in this world, I would immediately hop on and say, hey, can't go to the US, come to our country and pay half the price
yeah,
and don't have to deal with this immigration chaos.
yeah.
There's so much uncertainty for individuals right now. There's a lot of uncertainty for US companies that rely on this talent. Are you advising, are companies calling you? Are they nervous about their OPT folks? Are you suggesting that to alleviate some of this, that individuals think about a plan B from OPT?
Yes. I was on the phone till 11:30 p.m. last night, from 6 to 11:30 p.m. with four clients, two companies and two individuals, and they need solutions. They need to understand options immediately. And they all understand that this all might end up okay within a few days, within a week. There could be a pause and everything will go back to the way it is, but they want options right now. And so we're talking, I spoke to two students last night, both of whom I think they're not students, they're F1 students in OPT status, meaning they already have work authorization and they're already employed by companies here in the US. One is with a large company and one is with a startup. Both of them are looking to quickly get out of their F1 OPT status.
Okay.
They are both at Harvard, but this is going to be true of students who are in OPT status in many schools across the country.
Right.
We talked, I think they both qualify for O1s, and they both want to start O1 visa applications today. We are starting today on one of them. The other actually emailed back and wants to just pause for just several days to see how this plays out. And just because the one starting the O1 today doesn't mean that she's going to actually file the O1, but she wants it ready to go in case
Makes
she
sense.
needs to. I talked to two other organizations, companies who have workers, and they are totally freaked out. One is a venture capital company in Cambridge, has 3 Harvard students, and really, one of them is that she's already the acting CEO of the venture capital company, and she's in her last year of STEM OPT. They need her. They just can't have her fall out of status.
Right.
I think she's O1 caliber, but we also talked about the possibility of a cap-exempt H-1B, which people listening to this podcast know that you and I, Danielle, are heavily involved in helping people and companies obtain cap-exempt H-1B visas for their workforce. Maybe you'll talk a little bit about what it is or a summary, and then I can jump in with these examples that I'm hearing about in the last 2 days.
Yeah, this is so interesting, Jeff. And the reality is and I said this, I had a few calls with attorneys this morning talking about this, and all of us agreed if we were international students, we would just not want to be international student graduates. We would just not want to be in OPT today.
Right.
We would look for other solutions. And for individuals who have their own companies, it's a really easy way to immediately just take action and get yourself into a temporary work visa. And for individuals who have employers in OPT, if those employers are willing to help get it, you as a foreign national get into status, a temporary work visa status, whether it's O1 or H1B, then it can alleviate a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's a reality right now. So there's never a time, Jeff, that you and I ever advise anybody who's qualified for O1 to not go down that path, right? If you're qualified for O1, do an O1, it makes the most sense. But there are so many individuals out there that just don't prepare for an O1 visa. They don't have the qualifications and they need a solution imminently. I mean, this seems to be an emergency situation. Usually, folks have a visa expiring and they need a solution and they come to us looking for an H-1B without the lottery. And that's why the cap-exempt H-1B is a solution. So today, I mean, for Harvard students, I just wrote a blog about this an hour ago. For Harvard students that are in OPT and don't qualify for H-1B, they should apply to our fellowship program. They can work 5 hours a week leading students in education projects. It doesn't matter where they're located, and they can get a cap-exempt H-1B with us in 6 to 8 weeks and work for their company full-time as well, because that company can file a concurrent H-1B right on top of ours. And the company, if they're willing to support a foreign national in alleviating this anxiety right now, in getting out of this volatility that exists in OPT and just getting into a temporary work visa, that seems to make sense in this moment. And companies should be thinking about that, because one thing I certainly think about a ton is the productivity loss of foreign nationals when they are constantly burdened by the immigration stresses and realities. And if a company can say, hey, we found this program, we're going to invest in bringing you into this fellowship because you will actually be able to focus on your work versus monitoring the news every second of the day and living with this uncertainty, that eats people alive. And you know it well, because you've talked to so many foreign nationals and companies that deal with folks that are burdened by this. So this is my thought, is there is this reality where cap-exempt H-1B can be a solution. I'm curious what the reactions have been from some of the companies that you've talked to.
Yeah, many of them are in. They want to help their workers who are in STEM OPT or regular OPT be prepared. So I don't think anyone's going to rush and start filing petitions, but everyone wants to line it up in case it's necessary. And it can, as at the Build Fellowship by Open Avenues, we can work quickly to help people who need to jump to a cap-exempt H-1B in case their STEM OPT is taken away from them, or their regular OPT. But it does take time. It could take, 5 to 6 weeks before we could file. So people have already been telling me they want to talk, and I have a list of people who need conversations with the Build Fellowship today.
Right.
But of course, some of them do qualify for O1 visa, and that might be a better route to go. And they have to investigate every option. Mm-hmm. I do want to tell you about one interesting phone call I had this morning with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They have an outstanding global entrepreneur in residence program run out of the University of Massachusetts at Boston. But they're well aware that program cannot scale the way that the Build Fellowship has been able to. And this morning, I got a commitment from the governor's office to consider partnering with the Build Fellowship.
You're hearing it first with me live, everyone.
It is live.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they made it clear that they don't have funding for this, but by partnering, they want to work with us to make this as seamless as possible. And that's very exciting. Why
Yep.
are they doing this? Because the governor of Massachusetts, Maura Healey, is forward thinking and she gets it. She understands that immigrants have been invaluable to the growth of the Massachusetts economy. So, sure, we'll talk to the Massachusetts government and see how we can partner with them to expand opportunity to Harvard students who are working in Massachusetts. And then if we can find more time to breathe, we're going to do this in with the economic development offices of every state who have Harvard graduates and all people, because the cap-exempt H-1B visa is such an amazing solution.
I'm excited. It's never a dull moment here with us as anyone who's worked with Jeff and me for the last few years or interacted with the Build Fellowship and Open Avenues. The evolution of these organizations has continued to evolve and grow. Uh, some folks don't know that we built this out of Open Avenues Foundation. The fellowship program was built out of a nonprofit affiliated with colleges and universities. Everyone has, folks who know Open Avenues know that that has existed for 7 years, but we outgrew just this one nonprofit. And so we launched the Build Fellowship to be able to scale our program to other nonprofits and run these cap exempt H-1B fellowships successfully and compliantly at nonprofits across the country. So if anybody here knows a nonprofit that wants to partner and launch a Build Fellowship program to help us continue to expand, that's something we're very open to. And this is totally in line, Jeff. I mean, there's clearly a need. The cool thing is that the cap exempt H-1B is actually built right into legislation, right? So unlike OPT, unlike international students that are subject to the federal government's actions, and the executive branch, the reality of the H-1B is that the legislation around cap exempt H-1Bs, H-1Bs in general, the lottery, the caps, all of this is written and would require Congress to change it. Could things change in terms of the ability to get visa stamps at U.S. consulates or the slowdown of processes at USCIS? We never pretend like things can't happen that slow things down, but certainly the model exists and will continue to exist. So I know you and I feel confident about the continuation of this. Our last question from an audience member, because we always try to ensure that we're answering folks' questions real time as soon as possible. Someone asked yesterday if there was going to be a second H-1B lottery. This is also a timely question for individuals who feel like their OPT is at risk and they entered the lottery, they weren't selected, and they're hoping that maybe a second lottery will take place. Do you have any insight as to whether or not it will? It's never guaranteed, but curious your thought on it.
I would not hold my breath hoping for a second H-1B lottery, because the success rate in this year's lottery was much higher than in prior years. Part of it due to the fact that not as many people entered the lottery, but I think part of it also is that I think USCIS selected far more applicants this year in the lottery than they did last year, because they don't want to run a second lottery. It's expensive and time consuming and frankly adds a lot of confusion. So I don't think there'll be a second lottery this year, but there could be. We're all keeping our eyes opened to any announcement in the Federal Register that there will be a second lottery.
Yeah. My take is that it's interesting. Stuart Anderson actually wrote that there was a 25% decrease in registrations this year. And that was partly because of the increased registration fee. And it meant that companies thought twice before registering someone into the lottery versus registering every single employee potentially year after year. And perhaps that means that there were fewer frivolous entries and fewer companies will not end up filing, because the companies that don't end up filing even when they're selected is the reason that second lottery exists in the first place. So I'm curious if the increased fees resulted in a second lottery not taking place this year. But we will see. We don't know is the answer, and we will be monitoring and letting you know. That's all from us today. I really appreciate anyone who's tuning in. Jeff and I will continue to respond and have conversation around topics that are relevant and pertinent to your lives and to companies continuing to build here in the US. So we will see you soon. And Jeff, thanks for all the thoughts.
Sure. Great to see you, Danielle.
All right. Talk soon, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.